Arsenal are preparing to face Fulham in the Premier League, and the situation at the club is far more complicated than just a football match. Mikel Arteta walked into his press conference carrying the weight of a Champions League semi-final first leg that just happened, a title race that is slipping, and a squad that is not at full strength. The pressure at this club right now is real, and the decisions being made in the next few days will define whether this season ends in glory or in painful disappointment. The first major confirmation that came out of that press conference is that Aurier and Timber and Kai Havertz will both be unavailable for the Fulham match. That is confirmed. Those are two important players missing, and their absence has consequences that go beyond just one game. Arteta was then asked directly about Martin Odegaard, the club captain, who was forced off during the Champions League semi-final first leg against Atletico Madrid. His answer was short. He said, "Let us see. That is not a confirmation. That is not a denial. That is a manager protecting information while also acknowledging uncertainty. The reality for the club is that they are managing multiple fronts simultaneously. A Premier League title race, a Champions League semi-final second leg, an injury list that keeps growing, and a transfer window on the horizon that will require serious planning. Everything is connected, and today we are going to break it all down. Here is what is actually at stake right now for Arsenal. It is now clear that Arteta is rotating his squad while also trying to keep enough quality on the pitch to remain competitive in the Premier League. But the injury situation is not just a short-term headache. It is a long-term structural issue that the club is now officially taking steps to address. There is a confirmed report that Arsenal have brought in an external physiotherapist from outside the club's medical staff to review the injury crisis that has affected the squad throughout this entire campaign. That is a significant move. Clubs do not bring in outside medical reviewers unless they believe something is going wrong internally. Arsenal players have missed a combined 262 matches for club and country this season. Compare that to Manchester City, whose players missed 212. That gap is significant. Key players like Odegaard, Saka and Havertz all had considerable spells on the sidelines this campaign. This is not bad luck alone. This is a pattern that the club is now formally investigating. If you want deeper analysis on stories like this, stories that go beyond the headlines and actually explain what is happening at a football club at the highest level, then hit that subscribe button right now and join the Melissa Arsenal Analyst community. We break these things down properly. Now let us go through everything piece by piece. Confirms Timber and Havertz out, Odegaard uncertain. Connor Humm reported directly from Arteta's press conference. The confirmation is that Jurrien Timber and Kai Havertz remain sidelined and will not feature against Fulham. Arteta did not rule Martin Odegaard out. Now, here is my analysis on that. The fact that Arteta did not rule Odegaard out is interesting, but needs to be understood carefully. With the Champions League semi-final, second leg against Atletico Madrid coming on Tuesday, it would be a significant risk to play Odegaard against Fulham. Arteta is a calculated manager. He does not make reckless decisions. The most logical reading of that situation is that Odegaard will be rested for Fulham and saved for Atletico. But Arteta kept the door open, which tells you the squad situation is tight and he may need to keep all options available. Arteta's emotions after Atletico. Sky Sports News shared a clip of Arteta speaking about his emotions following the Atletico Madrid match. He described it as hunger to play, hunger to compete, hunger to win, hunger to be closer to achieving the dream. He acknowledged he was fuming at a specific decision involving Eberechi Eze during the match, but he framed his overall emotional response as motivation rather than frustration. My analysis: this is important leadership messaging. When a manager comes out of a high-pressure European game feeling angry about a refereeing decision, the easy route is to channel that anger publicly and create a narrative of victimhood. Arteta chose a different approach. He acknowledged the frustration but reframed it as desire. That tells you something about where his head is right now. He is focused, he is not distracted, he is pushing forward. That mental clarity from the manager at this point in the season matters enormously. Arteta press conference quotes in full. The AFC Stuff account shared the key quotes directly from Arteta. He said, "Let us see how everybody is tomorrow morning. Obviously, we have not been able to train much, so tomorrow we will have the final update on Havertz and Timber." He was clear. Okay, Havertz and Jurrien Timber will be out. On Odegaard, he said simply, "Let us see if Odegaard is available." My analysis: the phrase "we have not been able to train much" is telling. When a squad cannot train properly in the days before a Premier League game, decision-making becomes much harder. Arteta is essentially saying that his available squad is still being assessed. He cannot give definitive answers because the information is still changing. That is not a manager hiding things. That is a manager being honest about a genuinely uncertain situation. The fact that Timber and Havertz are the only two confirmed absentees at that stage suggests the rest of the squad is in a manageable state, even if not fully fit. Arteta on carrying the ball forward. Arteta was asked about Arsenal's attacking approach and specifically about how they plan to break down organised defences. He said, penetration is one of the words they use the most. He spoke about players taking initiative and making things happen. He acknowledged that going through passes is extremely difficult against a well-organised team and said Arsenal need to find other ways. My analysis, this is a tactically significant quote. Arteta is essentially acknowledging that Arsenal cannot rely purely on patient build-up play against a team as structured as Fulham. He is telling you, without saying it directly, that there will be more directness, more individual responsibility and possibly more willingness to take risks in the final third. When a manager says penetration and initiative are the keys, he is asking his players to make decisions rather than waiting for the system to create opportunities. That is a subtle but real shift in messaging. Arteta's full comments on Havertz and Atletico. Arteta expressed hope that Havertz would be available for the Champions League semi-final second leg. He said the focus has to be on availability and performance and that Kai is desperate to be on the pitch as quickly as possible. He confirmed Havertz cannot play against Fulham but said hopefully for Atletico he will be available. He also described Havertz as pushing every boundary to achieve that. My analysis. The language Arteta used here, pushing every boundary, is not casual. That is a manager publicly backing a player and also signalling to the squad and the fan base that Havertz is doing everything possible to return. It creates a positive narrative around the injury situation rather than a sense of doom. The key question remains whether Havertz can realistically recover in time for Tuesday. That is not confirmed. That is hope. And in these situations, hope and reality are not always the same thing. Arteta's extended comments on Havertz's absence. Arteta spoke at length about Havertz's absence this season. He called him a huge miss. He said Arsenal are talking about one of the most important players they have and that Havertz has been out for 7 or 8 months. He also acknowledged that Havertz has not been the only player to suffer long-term injuries, praising the squad's capacity to overcome these scenarios and remain very competitive. My analysis, 7 or 8 months is an enormous amount of time to be without a key player. When Arteta calls him one of the most important players they have, that is not just loyalty, that is an honest assessment of what Havertz brings in terms of pressing intensity, goal contributions and overall effectiveness in the system. The fact that Arsenal have remained competitive despite losing him for the majority of the season is genuinely impressive. But competitive and trophy winning are different things. The absence of Havertz and others has clearly had a cumulative effect on results. Uncertain futures for Jesus, Trossard and Martinelli. This is one of the most significant transfer updates. It is now being reported that Gabriel Jesus, Leandro Trossard and Gabriel Martinelli all face uncertain futures, with a summer exit a real possibility for all three. Ethan Nwaneri is also attracting interest from clubs in England and on the continent. My analysis, this is where the summer starts to take shape. 3 players who have all contributed to this squad in different ways are potentially moving on. Jesus has been a consistent contributor when fit, but has also had injury problems of his own. Trossard has been a reliable option across multiple positions, and Martinelli is someone who, despite his effort and energy, may have had a difficult season by his own standards. If all 3 leave, that creates significant space in the squad, but it also creates a financial and structural gap that Arsenal will need to fill with careful planning. The mention of Nwaneri attracting external interest is also something to watch. He is a young talent, and losing him would be a very different kind of loss. Arteta praising Marco Silva and Fulham. Arteta was asked about Fulham's season and their manager, Marco Silva. He said it is a remarkable job what Marco is doing. He described Silva as one of the best managers in the league. He praised the way Silva sets up his team and what he has done for the club. He acknowledged it is going to be a very tough game. My analysis, Arteta is known for respecting opponents publicly while preparing to compete hard against them. This is not just politeness. When a manager of Arteta's profile calls a rival one of the best in the league, it is also a signal to his own players not to underestimate the opposition. Arsenal have dropped points in matches where they perhaps went in expecting to control the game easily. Against Fulham at Emirates Stadium, there can be no such assumption. Thierry Henry's warning about Arteta. This is a major talking point. Thierry Henry, the Arsenal legend, made comments suggesting that Arteta could face difficult questions from the board if Arsenal fail to win a trophy this season. Henry said the board is going to have to decide what they are going to do with Mikel Arteta. He acknowledged that Arsenal have had significant investment and have been considered to have the best squad this season. His message was clear. At some point, after all those years and all that money, not winning has to be addressed. My analysis: Henry is not calling for Arteta to be sacked. That needs to be said clearly. What he is doing is raising a legitimate and fair question about accountability at the highest level of football management. Arsenal have invested heavily. They have a squad that many considered capable of winning the Premier League and going deep in Europe. If this season ends without a trophy, the board will rightly want to understand why. That is not an attack on Arteta. That is how elite football works. The pressure is real. The expectation is real. And Henry, as someone who understands what it means to win at Arsenal, is simply naming that reality. Arsenal's summer signing strategy. Arsenal are reportedly looking at several offensive signings this summer. The focus is on left wing and attacking midfield positions. There is also an emphasis on targeting younger players with a high ceiling and the ability to provide immediate impact and quality. My analysis: this strategy makes sense when you combine it with the early information about Martinelli, Trossard and Jesus potentially leaving. Arsenal need to replace not just bodies but creativity and directness in the final third. The focus on left wing is particularly logical, given that the left side of the attack has been a position where Arsenal have rotated frequently this season. The preference for younger players with a high ceiling suggests Arsenal are building for the long term while also expecting immediate contributions. That is a difficult combination to find, but not impossible with the right scouting. Arsenal launch injury review. Arsenal have officially brought in a physiotherapist from outside the club's medical staff to review the injury crisis that has affected the squad this season. Players have missed a combined 262 matches for club and country this campaign. Manchester City's equivalent figure is 212 matches missed. Key players, including Odegaard, Saka and Havertz, all had considerable spells on the sidelines. My analysis: bringing in external expertise to review internal processes is a significant institutional decision. It signals that the club's leadership, whether that is the ownership, the sporting director or Arteta himself, recognises that the injury rate is not just bad luck. It is a problem that requires investigation. The gap between Arsenal's 262 missed matches and Manchester City's 212 is 50 matches. That is an enormous difference over the course of a season. It is entirely reasonable to ask whether that gap reflects differences in training load, recovery protocols, medical decision-making or squad depth management. The review should help provide answers. Crystal Palace final day advantage. There is an interesting tactical angle being discussed regarding Arsenal's final day of the Premier League season. If Crystal Palace reaches the Conference League final, which is scheduled shortly after their final league meeting with Arsenal, Palace may rotate their squad to protect players from injury. That could potentially ease Arsenal's path to a win on the final day of the season. My analysis: this is a real consideration, but needs to be treated carefully. Arsenal cannot plan their season around another club's squad rotation decisions. What they can do is be fully prepared and professional, regardless of what Fulham or Palace or anyone else decides to do. The potential benefit is real, but not guaranteed. It is worth monitoring, but not worth celebrating in advance. Timber set to sign long-term extension. Arsenal are now reportedly confident that Jurrien Timber will sign a long-term contract extension this summer. Talks have progressed excellently according to this report. My analysis: this is genuinely positive news for Arsenal fans if it is confirmed. Timber, when fit, is exactly the kind of player this system needs. His energy, his ability to push forward from defence and his technical quality make him a key figure. The fact that he has had injury problems this season makes securing him on a long-term deal even more important. You do not want a player of his profile leaving or entering the final stages of his contract while also recovering from injury. If these talks are as advanced as reported, it is a strong sign of commitment from both the player and the club. Arsenal considering move for Endrick. Arsenal are reportedly considering a summer move for Endrick, the Brazilian forward currently at Real Madrid. He would cost around €70 million, according to this report. My analysis: this is currently only a consideration, according to reports. It is important to be clear about that. Endrick is a highly talented young player, but a move of €70 million is a very large commitment. Arsenal would need to be certain about how he fits into the squad structure, his role within the system, and whether he is ready to perform consistently at Premier League level. This is a rumour at this stage, and viewers should treat it as such. It is interesting, but not confirmed in any way. Reports Arsenal interest in Barış Alper Yılmaz. Arsenal are reportedly preparing to open talks with Galatasaray over a potential move for the Turkish winger Barış Alper Yılmaz this summer. Arsenal sporting director Andrea Berta has already scouted the player in person and gave him a strong evaluation following an impressive season. Galatasaray value the 25-year-old at around €50 million and have already rejected a lower bid from another club earlier in the campaign. There is also a sell-on clause to resolve with Ankara Keçiören and Gucci. The report acknowledges that questions remain about whether Yilmaz is the level expected for a title-challenging side. My analysis: there are a few things worth noting here. First, the fact that Berta has personally scouted him is a genuine indicator of serious interest. Sporting directors at elite clubs do not spend time at games for players. They are not genuinely evaluating. Second, the €50 million valuation is significant but manageable for Arsenal if the player fits the profile they are looking for. Third, and this is important, the report itself raises the question of whether Yilmaz is the right level for a club chasing the Premier League title. That is an honest and fair concern. Arsenal's fan base will want to see the club targeting proven quality rather than projects at this stage of their development as a title-challenging side. AAC Stuff reports Arsenal interest in Endrick Kroupi. Arsenal are reportedly interested in Bournemouth striker Endrick Kroupi. Bournemouth are expected to demand a significant fee. If a move happens, Kroupi could become one of the most expensive strikers Arsenal has ever signed, potentially exceeding the £65 million paid for Kai Havertz in 2023. My analysis: Arsenal's striker situation is something that needs to be resolved this summer. With Jesus facing an uncertain future, the club needs to identify a clear number 9 option. Kroupi is someone who has impressed at Bournemouth, and the potential fee suggests Bournemouth know what they have. Exceeding £65 million for a striker is a serious commitment. Arsenal would need to be very confident in his ability to perform at the highest level consistently. This is another rumour at this stage, but it connects directly to the broader summer strategy of targeting offensive quality. 7 players to miss Arsenal versus Fulham, Arteta's triple update. The situation going into the Arsenal versus Fulham Premier League match is one of genuine complexity. Arteta confirmed at his press conference that Havertz and Timber are out. On Odegaard, his response was simply, "Let us see." He also noted the team had not been able to train much, meaning the final update on availability would only come the following morning. There is also the broader context of Mikel, the Spain international who underwent foot surgery in January. Merino himself spoke about his recovery, describing it as going great, but slowly. He said it is one of those injuries where you have to take care of them. He expressed hope that he would soon be progressing even more. The implication is that Merino may yet feature before the season ends, but that is not confirmed. For Fulham, Marco Silva provided a mixed picture. Kenny Tete, who had been out for 6 weeks, could potentially return and be involved in the game. However, former Arsenal player Alex Iwobi and a player referred to only as Kevin remain unavailable. Ryan Sessegnon was also ruled out after being forced off the previous weekend against Aston Villa. Silva was clear that Sessegnon would miss the Arsenal match and likely the one after as well, with a day-by-day assessment to follow. In terms of how Arsenal might line up, there are several options being discussed. Bukayo Saka and Eberechi Eze came off the bench during the Atletico Madrid match and could start against Fulham. There could also be changes in defence, with Ricardo Calafiori now available again and potentially coming in alongside or instead of Miles Lewis-Skelly. On the other side, Christian Mosquera could be considered ahead of Ben White following Ben White's difficult performance in Madrid. My full analysis: this article paints a picture of a squad under significant stress but still functional. The number of moving parts in Arsenal's team selection right now is remarkable. Arteta is essentially managing 3 competitions simultaneously: the Premier League, the Champions League semi-final and the physical recovery of multiple key players. Every team selection decision at this moment has to be made with Tuesday's Atletico's second leg in mind. That is not a normal situation. That requires exceptional squad management and a very clear hierarchy of priorities. The Champions League semi-final is almost certainly the priority, which means against Fulham, Arsenal may use players who are reliable but not necessarily at their sharpest. That creates risk in the Premier League at a time when they cannot afford to drop points. Gary Lineker identifies the 2 players Arsenal are missing most. The evidence suggests that Arsenal's recent form has been well below the standard expected of a title-winning team. They lost to Manchester City, lost to Bournemouth and drew with Newcastle in their recent Premier League matches. The pattern is clear. Arsenal have not scored more than 1 goal in any of their last 8 games. That is a significant attacking problem. Gary Lineker, speaking on a well-known football podcast, identified the root cause as the absence of Jurrien Timber and Riccardo Calafiori. His argument was not about their defensive contributions, it was about what they provide going forward. He described both players as having a real energy about them, with Timber constantly bombing into the box and Calafiori doing the same from the left side. That forward energy from fullback positions has disappeared from Arsenal's game. On the right side, Ben White has stepped in for Timber, but it is now clear that White's performances have not matched what Timber provides. He has looked less dynamic going forward and more vulnerable defensively. That has reduced Arsenal's ability to control games from the right flank. On the left, Thierry Henry has provided defensive stability, but in a more measured way than Calafiori. Henry does not make the same forward runs into the box. That balance helps defensively, but comes at the cost of attacking output. My full analysis, Lineker's point, is a very precise tactical observation, and it holds up under examination. In modern football, fullbacks are not just defenders. They are integral to the attacking system. They provide width, they create overloads, and they add an extra body in the opposition box. When Timber and Calafiori were both fit and performing, Arsenal had unpredictability from those positions. Opposition teams had to account for two defenders who could also function as attacking threats. Without them, Arsenal become more predictable. The width they need comes only from the wide attackers, and the box presence they need relies entirely on the centre forwards and midfielders. That narrows the options and makes Arsenal easier to defend against. The fact that Arsenal have not scored more than 1 goal in 8 games is the statistical confirmation of what Lineker described. This is not a coincidence. It is a direct consequence of the personnel changes forced by injury. The evidence also suggests that this is why Arsenal have moved so quickly in assessing summer transfer targets for the left wing and attacking midfield positions. The club's leadership is not waiting to see how the season ends before planning. They are already working on solutions because they understand exactly what is missing and why. Closing section, pulling everything together. Here is the complete picture of Arsenal right now. In the short term, Havertz and Timber are confirmed out for Fulham. Odegaard's involvement is uncertain and likely being managed around the Atletico second leg. Merino is not yet available. The squad is stretched but still functional. In the medium term, the Champions League semi-final second leg against Atletico Madrid is the defining fixture of this week. Arsenal went into the second leg with whatever result they produced in the first leg, and how they manage their squad between now and Tuesday will be critical. In the longer term, the summer transfer window is already being shaped. Offensive reinforcements are being sought. Gabriel Jesus, Leandro Trossard and Gabriel Martinelli all face uncertain futures. Jurrien Timber is close to signing a long-term extension, which is positive news. External targets, including Endrick, Barisalpa Yilmaz and Endrick Kroupi, have all been mentioned, though these are at different stages and different levels of reliability as reports. The injury crisis is being formally reviewed with external expertise. That is an important institutional step. Arsenal have lost 262 player appearances to injury this season compared to Manchester City's 212. That difference matters, and the club is now taking active steps to understand and address it. Thierry Henry has raised the question of accountability if the season ends without trophy. That is a conversation the club's leadership will have, regardless of what happens. It is a fair conversation to have. The one clear positive on the contract front is Timber's extension, which signals that despite the difficulties, the core of this squad remains committed to the project. This is where Arsenal are, under pressure, still competing, looking ahead and trying to make the right decisions across multiple fronts at the same time. Thank you for watching Melissa, Arsenal Analyst. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on who you think Arsenal should prioritise this summer. And share this video with any Arsenal fan who wants proper analysis rather than just headlines. I will see you in the next one.